Hello everyone, welcome back to the Sapphire Bear Tavern. I hope you're all having a good day, and if not, maybe I can help you get your troubles for a bit. Today we're looking at Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves, released in 2005. As you've probably figured out by now, I like to give some sort of background information on what I talk about. Unfortunately, information was sparse this time around. What I could find is production for Honor Among Thieves was the shortest for the original trilogy, lasting only 11.5 months. The only thing I could find was that while not as well received as Band of Thieves, it still earned positive reviews from critics at the time. As I said at the end of my previous review, this would not only be Sly and the Gang's last foray on the PS2, but also the last game developed by Sucker Punch before they moved on to Infamous. Is it a good send-off, or is this one heist that shouldn't be attempted? Let's find out. Grab a drink, find a seat, and get comfy as we look at Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves. The game opens with, you guessed it, a heist. Once again, this time is different, as Sly appears to be helped by several individuals beyond Bentley and Murray. After a short trek through the island, we hitch a ride on top of an elevator, where we're introduced to the big bad of the game, Dr. M. In case you aren't sure how to feel about him, his intro involves him revealing he poisoned a henchman for failing to change a password. So yeah, definitely not the nicest man. After some more platforming, Sly finds himself in front of a massive vault door. Before he can open it, Dr. M attacks, forcing Sly and Bentley to make run for it. Despite their best efforts, Bentley is captured by Dr. M via one of his creations. Sly manages to free his friend, only to find himself in the monster's clutches. As he faces certain death, the story flashes back to show us how we got here. Following the events of Band of Thieves, Murray left the gang due to his guilt over Bentley getting his legs crushed. Sly and Bentley carry on, eventually running into McSweeney, a member of the previous Cooper gang led by Sly's father. He tells Sly about the Cooper Vault, a place where all the loot the Coopers have collected over the generations is stored. The pair locate the island, only to find it taken over by Dr. M, who turned it into a fortress. Realizing this is beyond their capabilities, they convince Murray to return, and go looking for specialists to help them pull off their biggest heist yet. Before we can do that, we're forced into a tutorial that teaches you how to run, jump, rotate the camera, etc. In any other game, this would be fine. Expected even. Here it seems out of place since the opening level in all the games is the tutorial. They just drop us into a short intro to give us a chance to figure out how the game works with a minimal chance of failure while kickstarting the story. Plus, this is the third game in the series. I'm not sure why they waited until now to pull this off. What makes this an even bigger head scratcher is all subsequent tutorials are optional, with the second option for all them being, I already know how to play the character. So why couldn't the first one also be skippable? If you're playing this game, it's safe to assume you've played at least one of, if not both of the first two games. Ugh. I know this is inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, and it doesn't take too long to get through, but still annoyed me enough to want to bring it up. Okay, back on topic. This is without a doubt the lowest stakes story in the franchise. It's not a do-or-die scenario like in Thieves Raccoonus, it's certainly not the high-stakes adventure like Band of Thieves, and it's not like Dr. M is working with all the other villains to achieve his goal. In fact, this is the only game in the franchise where all the villains have nothing to do with each other. They're just doing their own thing until Sly and Co. show up to recruit the expert for the big heist. And I'm okay with this. I know the final entry in the trilogy is supposed to pull out all the stops to deliver a climactic ending. However, I feel like there's only so many times you can escalate a threat before it gets stale. Besides, I don't see how things could have escalated further from Band of Thieves. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to scale back the threat while still giving the hero a personal stake in the story. In that regard, I can say the story succeeds. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it serves as a nice bookend for the trilogy. The series starts off with Sly saving his family legacy, and ends with Sly gaining access to said legacy. Aside from that, we learn that Dr. M worked with his father in the previous iteration of the Cooper Gang. He wants to take all the treasure in the vault due to feeling mistreated by Sly's father. This serves as a bit of a dark reflection as Bentley goes through similar feelings. And boy, could the story have handled this better. It starts when the gang recruit Penelope at the end of Flight of Fancy. It's obvious Bentley's into her, but she's initially a bit flirtatious with Sly. Obviously, Bentley gets jealous, going so far as to lament why women always go for Sly. My dude, you haven't told her you liked her, and women are not mind readers, so it's your own fault. Eventually, they talk and save each other, leading them to become a proper couple. In other words, it's one of those conflicts that could have been solved with a conversation. Annoying, but not the worst use I've ever seen. Now, if there's one area the story gets right, it's the ensemble cast of new and returning faces. With each of them having differing personalities, we get some solid interactions. One of the best comes in the final episode where Dimitri tries to woo Penelope with his unique charisma. She's having none of it, telling him to get over himself twice. Then there's 2 in a cold alliance. The first is after recruiting Panda King, who has to reconcile with his other personality. After a makeshift therapy session, he tells Sly he will not kill him this day, to which Oliver Sly can reply with his ditto. Later on, Panda King helps Murray retrieve the van by providing cover fire. Murray is so happy he agrees to let Panda King ride shotgun for a month, which the latter takes as a great honor. And I find that amusing. Little moments like this make me wish there was another game with this cast of characters. The structure and controls are the same as Band of Thieves with a few minor tweaks. Bentley and Murray can now pickpocket unaware enemies, and treasures inside pouches get added to the coin total instead of needing to be sold on ThiefNet. Nice quality of life improvement, if you ask me. The trade-off is, for some reason, this is the only game in the franchise that doesn't have clue bottles. Instead, they've been replaced with challenges. They're nothing terribly exciting, mostly just complete X within a time limit. I prefer the clue bottle since it gives you a reason to explore in between missions with a satisfying sound when you break them. Plus, the world feels a bit empty without them. The biggest change this time around is the addition of 5 new playable characters, each with their own playstyle. That is ambitious and sounds like a great addition. However, this is one area where the short development becomes apparent, as not all of them are created equal in terms of depth and screen time. Starting off, Carmelia comes armed with her trusty shock pistol, along with the ability to strafe and high jump. In other words, she turns the game into Ratchet and Clank minus the wacky arsenal. Not much else to say, as her playstyle is point yourself at the enemy, mash the fire button, and dodge. Wish her shock pistol had a higher rate of fire too. On the other extreme of combat is the Guru, Murray's mentor in the ways of peace. He is a hardcore pacifist who is not able to attack at all. To compensate, he can disguise himself to evade enemies. While it does take several seconds to kick in, you can move while using it. The main move you get the most use out of is leaping onto unaware enemies to mind control them to ram into things, easily the most unique ability of the game. Problem is, controlled enemies move fast with no way to slow down. This is most annoying during the mission Frame Team Belgium, where you have to steal an ice sculpture by ramming several guards into the back of a moving truck. After the first hit, the truck will start spitting out bear traps in an attempt to stop you. Let me tell you, it is so annoying to get close to hitting the truck only to get smacked with a bear trap. That at least gets to control a giant wolf and a giant squid later on. That's pretty cool. Overall, it's a solid concept that could have used a couple tweaks to make it great. Up next is Penelope, an expert RC pilot who comes equipped with an RC helicopter and car. Between the two, the car is better. The gimmick with the chopper is you can drop a grappling hook onto enemies and then blast off in a direction to yank them into the air. Unless it's a tank or heavy enemy, those you have to go back and forth several times. The thing that kills the chopper is that the drop shadow is a bit too small, making grabbing enemies more annoying than it has to be. No wonder it only gets used twice in the game. As for the car, it gets several missions, including a stealth infiltration and saving Murray from an explosive end. The car handles pretty well, even though it does have a tendency to flip over a bit too easily. Though that might be more of a knock on the level design for these segments, as they have tight turns and uneven terrain. It only takes a moment for it to flip back up, so I can't knock them too hard. Panda King returns from Thieves Raccoonus to provide long-range explosive support with his fireworks. Hold down the attack button to load, move the camera over targets to lock on, and release to fire. There is a bit of a risk-reward system in place where if you load the launcher completely, the fireworks do double damage. Hold down the button for too long though, and they'll explode, forcing you to start over while dealing damage to yourself. While it makes sense given his backstory, I'm disappointed we don't get to use his Flame Fu, namely because we were on the receiving end of it during his boss fight. The game does compensate by giving him a handful of set pieces, such as holding off hordes of vampires while Sly cracks a safe, and fighting a giant squid in the latter half of the game. Definitely one for the solid but could have used a couple tweaks category. Finally, Dimitri returns from Band of Thieves with a diving suit used by his grandfather for underworld traversal. As much as I love Dimitri as a character, his gameplay leaves a lot to be desired. The thing that kills his section are the controls. Instead of using the right stick to move, you have to mash the face buttons to get around. Much like the tank sections in Band of Thieves, this screams different for the sake of being different. Plus, I am not a fan of the low rate of fire his harpoon gun has, especially during Dr. M's squid boss fight. At least there's only 2 of them, so we're not suffering too much. Now, if you think the new characters are undercooked in places, well, that feeling extends to the rest of the gameplay too. I'm guessing since this was going to be the final game, the devs decided to take the opportunity to throw in every single idea they ever had. The result is gameplay that, while solid as ever, feels a bit unfocused. Since there's so much going on, I'm only going to touch on some of the more noteworthy things. Let's start with disguises. These grant Sly the ability to blend in and get past guards to areas he normally couldn't. On paper, that sounds like a fantastic addition to a thief's toolkit. Too bad there are only 4 missions that require a disguise. Not only that, there's no incentive to use them outside of missions, since all you can do is slowly walk around and recite passwords to avoid detection. You know how else you can avoid detection? By using Sly's natural moveset. The final nail in the coffin is disguises are only useful in the episode you receive them in, making them situational at best. Another new idea are dialogue choices. At certain points in the game, whichever character you're playing as will get an idea bubble with 3 choices where you need to pick the correct option to advance. Again, it sounds like a good addition to the toolkit. Could be used to fast talk your way out of certain situations. Too bad there are only 2 times in the game when saying the wrong thing has any consequences. The first is in A Cold Alliance, where Sly enters Paniking's mind to break him out of his meditative trance. It's just the boss fight from Thieves Raccoonus with the wrong option continuing the fight. Nothing special there. The second is the pirate insults in Dead Men Tell No Tales. All you have to do is avoid using words that have already been used to pass. Every other time, the option you need to pick is obvious, or you need to cycle through a couple before it pops up. Like the disguises, it's a great idea on paper, I just wish the execution was better. Now, if there's one thing I did like, it's the pirate ship in Dead Men Tell No Tales. The primary use is to sail to the various missions with the option to fight other ships along the way. While all you have are cannons, it's fun to maneuver your ship into position for the best results. You also have to plug any holes that pop up when you get hit, giving Sly something to do other than just stand there. Once defeated, you're given the option of either sinking the enemy ship for some coins, or boarding them to defeat the captain for a ton of coins. Does it have a lot of depth? No. Did I spend more time on this than I needed to? Yes. And if you think about it, Sucker Punch technically created Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag 2 years before Assassin's Creed was even a thing. I just think that's neat. Boss fights this time around are a step above Band of Thieves, though, once again, some are better than others. Up first is Octavio, who makes a strong first impression once you get past the first phase. It's not that exciting since all you do is repeat the prompts he uses that mostly revolve around mashing X. Luckily, the next 2 phases more than make up for it. It starts with a fast-paced boat chase where you take potshot at his boats, all the while dodging obstacles along with the various bombs he throws out. The final phase has you control Murray to lay the final smackdown on him using his own tar to slow him down. At first, he'll throw tar balls from a distance and smack you around if you get too close. During the final phase, he busts out this sonic attack, giving you something else to dodge. Overall, he's a good boss fight to kick things off and one of the better first bosses in the series. Now, if you had to ask me who I think is the coolest boss in the game, it would definitely be the first phase against General Tsao. The fight takes place in an arena that turns the game into Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon for a moment. You can leap from one end to the other, as well as redirect yourself in midair for better position to hit him. It's great. The second phase lands the pair on the ground in a more standard affair. Sal pulls out black magic that you need to dodge and strike where you can. Bit of a letdown at the first phase, but still a solid fight. As for disappointing, look no further than the fight against Lafouille. As Penelope, you'll engage the nefarious pirate in a swashbuckling duel on a ship's mast. Now that has boss fight written all over it. Too bad the first 2 phases have him spam low and high attacks respectively, with the final phase seeing him mix them together. And for some reason, while the game tells you how to dodge, it doesn't tell you that square and triangle are your own low and high attacks. Honestly, the most noteworthy thing about this fight is that it's one of the few where the boss straight up dies in the end. Oh, I'm not kidding. The cutscene following the fight shows his hat floating on the water, being circled by sharks. Doesn't take a genius to put 2 and 2 together. With that, we find ourselves back to where the game began, with Sly about to be eaten by one of Dr. M's creations. Luckily, Carmelita shows up to arrest Sly, because of course she does. She fights off the hulking monster who sends Sly flying. He survives, but receives a concussion in the process. While he recovers enough to carry on, Bentley warns him that another blow could result in severe brain damage. Sly insists on continuing because they're fighting for his legacy. He's also the title character, so he kinda has to keep going. Once inside the vault, we're given one last platforming challenge. This is the single best platforming challenge in the game, possibly the franchise. It tests almost all the skills you've learned throughout the game while having plenty of obstacles to navigate, a good chunk of which require decent timing. It's a solid challenge. Plus, the visual of all the gold and treasure is nice, showing just how successful the Cooper family has been over the generations. However, the road to the vault is not easy, as, in conjunction with various challenges, you had to fight Dr. M not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 5 times. Good lord. Clockwork only took 2 fights before he was fully defeated. Then again, we did have to go through 2 games, so... we'll call it a wash. While the fights take place across land, air, and sea, the only one worth talking about is the final showdown in the Inner Sanctum. That's because it is without a doubt the hardest boss fight in the franchise. The first parts of each phase are easy, as all you have to do is grab Dr. M to bring him down and avoid his subsequent laser blast. Everything afterwards is a pain in the ass. He shoots projectiles that'll chase you all over the arena unless you jump off and back on. That just gives him the opportunity to shoot at you with his laser, which is hard to dodge. He's constantly attacking with small windows for you to get hits in. He also has a charge attack that'll send you flying if it connects. I know Clockwork and Clockla were also challenging, but they weren't this bad. And his actions don't even have an impact on the world, so I don't understand why he's so hard. After laying enough of a smackdown, Carmelita shows up. The good doctor tries to shoot her, only for Sly to heroically leap in front of the shot. This sends him flying for a second time and knocks him out. Carmelita is having none of it, and introduces Dr. M to the business end of her shock pistol. Kind of anticlimactic having her finish the job, though it is nice to see her get some shots off on the big bad after her disappointment at the end of Band of Thieves. She rushes over to Sly, finding that he's still alive, but suffering from amnesia. After convincing him that he's her partner, the pair manage to escape the crumbling cavern. Meanwhile, Dr. M refuses to leave, resulting in him getting buried with his greatest desire. Not long after, the gang finds Sly's cane outside an alternate entrance to the vault. You'd think in the 20 years Dr. M had the island, he would have found it. The game's almost over, so let's just move on. When he doesn't reappear, the gang go their separate ways. They all pursue their own interests, the most noteworthy of which being Bentley and Penelope developing a time machine. I'm sure that will in no way become relevant later on. In the post-credits scene, we see that Bentley managed to track down Sly. The game ends with Sly winking to the camera, indicating that he's faking his amnesia to be with Carmelita. So yeah, I think the game provides a nice send-off for the trilogy. It wraps up Sly's story in a satisfying way, while giving some good character moments along the way. As for the issues, the biggest one is the gameplay is a bit overstuffed. There are good ideas like the disguise and dialogue choices, with the pirate ship probably being the best idea in the game. I just wish the game had spent another 6 to 12 months fleshing things out a bit more. And there was a lot of stuff I did not touch on, like Murray's new ball form, the fact that some levels can be played in 3D, or even the biplane. Yes, there is a biplane in this 3D platformer. Make of that what you will. Despite my issues, there's really nothing horribly wrong here. If you want to experience how Sly's story ends, there's no harm in checking this one out. After the release of the game, Sucker Punch moved on to the next generation with Infamous. It seemed that Sly and Co. were destined to be stuck on the PS2. That is, until Sony gave Sanzaru Games the go-ahead to create another game. That being the next, and at the time of recording, final game in the franchise, Sly Cooper: Thieves in Time. Is it a worthy continuation, or is this a case where a different developer can't capture the magic of the original games? Well, come back next time to find out. Until then, thank you all for stopping by, and take care.